Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brightsiding podcast, and welcome to the debut, I should say, of the Brightsiding YouTube channel, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while. And I love being in front of the camera. I love musing at length about my experiences, my reflections. And for a while, I tried and experimented with TikTok, which was always fun for me, but just like as a platform, I cannot engage with TikTok because it's so addictive to my brain. And I also am such a long form speaker, writer, creator that super short form method wasn't like quite the right fit for me. So now that I'm back from my 3-month journey in Asia, which is what I'll be talking about today, I thought, why not get on YouTube? I'm going to talk more about the intentions for this channel and the extension of the podcast in the next episode. So stay tuned for that. But what I really want to do today is talk about my trip. I just got back from 3 months in Asia. I was in Japan, Bali, and Thailand, and there is so much to unpack. I feel like I'm returning back to New York a different person and maybe a more like self-actualized version of myself, which is, I suppose, exactly what I hoped for in leaving for that trip. In one of my earlier Brightsiding episodes, I talk about the impetus for the trip and what inspired it and what my intentions were. And the purpose of this episode is really to reflect on the experiences that I had and what I'm taking with me as I'm settling back into New York and how I'm really synthesizing this experience, because it truly felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity to go do that. And to do it alone was crazy. I wasn't alone for the entirety of the trip, but I went into this not knowing anyone and not even really knowing what the full like agenda was going to be. So it was quite a journey. To quickly recap why I went on this trip in the first place, in late October, early November, an opportunity to go do a month-long writer's retreat in Tokyo came across my desk, you could say. And by that, I mean, my friend Alex literally DM'd me a post on Instagram advertising this program. And he was like, haha, this looks so fun. And I was like, you're kidding, but I'm actually like, I'm going to go do this. This looks incredible. And at that time, I was about 6 months on the other side of leaving my corporate job at Google. And I left to run my personal project, my company, I guess you could say, Brightsiding, full-time, which is a platform centered on the concept of meeting yourself where you are. I write a newsletter, I have this podcast, and I run workshops for corporate teams who are navigating difficult moments. And it was a dream of mine to leave Google for a very long time. And once I was on the other side of it, I learned a lot about, myself and what I was gravitating towards. And this first year out, which I also am going to reflect on more at length in a different episode, was really about intuition and allowing myself to really discover what I was gravitating towards from like a creation perspective. And writing really was the thing I was very leaned into and engaged with last fall. I did a writer's workshop in Manhattan in October, November, through Gotham, which was so affirming and fun and really got the creative juices flowing. And I was really craving more of that. So when this opportunity to go write in Japan came along, I couldn't have jumped at it faster. I had also been saying that I really didn't want to be in New York for the winter, but I wasn't really actively pursuing any opportunities to like make that happen. In my mind, I was like, oh, I'll go to Mexico City for a few months. No real plan to make that happen. The intention was certainly there. Once I learned about this opportunity in Japan, I was just like, okay, I guess this is my ticket out of New York for the winter. And I worked really hard to like make that opportunity happen financially. I launched a mood boarding offering through Brightsiding. That's probably a whole other episode as well. But I just hustled to make it happen. And I also decided once I applied for and got into the program and was like committed to it, that if I was going to travel all the way to Japan, I was going to go explore Asia for a few months after the program, which was so exciting to me. I love travel, adore, I don't know, any experience that is going to like expand my perspective and put me out of my comfort zone and introduce me to new people, cultures, ways of thinking, missions, all of that. And I had never been to Asia before. So it was a really exciting opportunity. I booked a round trip ticket out of Tokyo, leaving on January 9th, and I returned to New York April 1st, which is also the day that I quit my job last year, which felt very spiritual and full circle. And I went into Japan really not knowing what my destinations were going to be after Japan, but with a loose idea that I would end up in Bali. And then I was thinking I was going to end up in Australia after that, but I ended up going to Japan, Bali, and Thailand. And it was a really, yeah, it was an incredible trip. So I'm going to break this episode down into 4 parts. I'm going to talk about each chapter chronologically. So Japan, Bali, Thailand. And then I'm going to talk about or address some frequently asked questions that I've been getting from friends and family as I've been settling back into New York. But before we even get into like those specific breakdowns, I guess my intention with this video and this podcast is to share to anyone who's feeling stuck, craving change, or wondering what it really feels like to start over, because this trip was a major reboot of my system, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And it was beautiful, but it was, you know, as you can imagine, it was a roller coaster. Like there were high highs, there were low lows, there were joyful moments, there were lonely moments, there were scary moments. It was like a pretty full spectrum experience. So we'll get into all of it. But if I could describe it in 3 words, it would be expansive, spiritual, and magical. Yeah, magical. But let's start with Japan. Okay, so I land in Tokyo on January 9th, and I am super jet lagged. I talk about Tokyo like it was rehab because I was cold turkey coming down from stimulants. I had been taking ADHD meds, Adderall and Vyvanse interchangeably for the past 5 years. And about a week before my trip, learned that you cannot take stimulants into Japan without a doctor's note, which is like not like an easy process. You have to like literally get sign off from their government that you can bring this substance into the country, because it's a highly controlled substance in Japan, which is interesting and makes you wonder why it's so widely available in America. I'm back on stimulants now, but yeah, Tokyo was really like a complete physical reset. And I landed in Japan about 5 days before my program started, which was great because I honestly was just like asleep for the first 3 days between the jet lag and stimulants leaving my system. And just like, yeah, adjusting to basically landing on a different planet. It took my body a minute to like get online there. But the adrenaline rush of being in Tokyo and the novelty and the excitement, I think really overrode my system. And once I was like adjusted to the time difference, I was just so excited to be there and so excited to explore. I love New York because it offers me so much like exploration on foot and adventure, and there's always something to experience. But I've been in New York for 10 years, so the city feels quite familiar and like broken into me. So it was incredible to land in Tokyo and just be exposed to this like completely new, huge city. Geographically, Tokyo is 5 times the size of Manhattan, and Manhattan's fucking huge. So, well, I guess it's not that big. You can like walk it in a day, but which I've done, which is really fun. But I think that was like a great playground for me to land in as I was, you know, expanding my writing perspective, really adjusting to like this new physical reality that I was in without any medication. And it was incredible. So I was there for 4 or 5 days. Then my program started on, I think, January 12th, and I checked into the guest house where I was staying. I'm 30. I live alone, and I was living in a guest house with 10 people. I was in a room with 1 roommate, sleeping on like tatami mat floors, like mats on the floor, basically. So it was like a huge adjustment for me. It was like being in college again. And it was amazing though. I really liked that experience, and it felt like being at camp. And I feel like it's very rare to have that sort of experience at my age. And I was on the older end of the spectrum in terms of like the people in my house, but there were 30 people in the program itself. And I was pretty like smack dab in the middle age range, like of the cohort of 30 people. But my roommate, Regina, was an absolute angel. Like we got along so well. She is on a very similar like path to me right now. She also left her corporate job last year and is just like reimagining what her future looks like. So we bonded a lot over that and just found like quite a beautiful connection in each other. So that was really, really special and beautiful. And the guest house where I was staying was about an hour and a half walk to the like school, I guess, or the place where my program was being held. So I would wake up pretty early in the morning, journal, get my head on straight, because I need a lot of time to like come online in the morning and like wake up and like ease myself into the day and being social. So I'd wake up really early, just kind of have some time to myself in the common area of our guest house, and then I would walk to school every day. I feel like such a boomer parent, like rain, snow, or sun, I was walking to school, but I loved it. And that like was such a beautiful way to see a lot of the city, and that movement was really, really healthy for me, especially as I was like getting my brain chemistry regulated. So yeah, the program itself was amazing, really expansive. Honestly, wasn't as like writing intensive as I would have liked for it to be or expected it to be. In contrast to like the workshop that I did in New York, where it was very like the topic or prompt is introduced for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then you write for 30 minutes, and then you share, and then you write for 30 minutes, and then you share, and then you write for 30 minutes. I responded really well to that sort of structure, but this program structure was a bit more like lecture based, and you write on your own time, which didn't work super well for me as someone who like has ADHD and was freshly off medication. Like without someone kind of like locking me to my desk and like looking over my shoulder, like it was very hard for me to like lock in and write. But the structure of the days was like classes 5 days a week, Japanese lessons in the morning. It was like a big part of the appeal for this program for me is that it was like partially a cultural immersion program. So we started our day with Japanese language classes. Also, it made me realize how much I love language learning and how good that is for my brain to like warm up and kind of like get ready for the more intense like lecture content in the afternoon. So we'd have our language classes, and then we'd have a break for lunch, and then we'd have like 1 or 2 lectures in the afternoon. And it was great. It was like topics like ethical travel writing, copywriting, writing about Japan. It was quite like mindful, I guess, and like very intentional, the curriculum, in terms of like really being aware of how you are representing a place as like a travel writer, which I don't necessarily consider myself a travel writer, but it was great. And at the end of the day, like that program got me over to Asia for 3 months and like was great structure for me as I was like going through this like physical adjustment. And in general, a huge intention for this trip, like a more macro intention for me, was to really reset my relationship to my physical self. I think in New York, I had kind of like lost, I don't know, there was a disconnect between like my mind and my body at the end there, or like at the end of December before I left. And I think that was partially because, you know, I had been on these stimulants for so long. My appetite was very affected by that. My sleep had become quite affected. And so it felt really good just to like have this container of this writing program to go support me as I really was just focused on like discovering my appetite again and like sleeping normally again and like finding my rhythm within my body. And that was really, really stunning. And in my free time, I was walking around. I was taking the train to whatever corner of Tokyo. I probably went to every vintage store in Tokyo. I swear to God, like that was my, like, those were my museums. I love vintage shopping. I love shopping in general. And Tokyo is one of the like top destinations for vintage shopping right now. And I didn't make a ton of purchases. I did shop a lot in Thailand. We'll get to that. But the Tokyo part of my adventure, I was like trying not to shop too much. One, because I had 2 more months of travel ahead of me and I didn't want to just be like accumulating things to like bring with me. And I also wanted to be pretty mindful of like consumption and not fall into too much like not replace too many of my like dopamine hits with shopping. I learned after I left Google that I had a really complicated, I guess you could say, relationship to shopping. I think I maybe was like had a low grade shopping addiction while I was there. More on that later. But over the course of the fall, I was like really working on like unraveling that and taking an honest look at my like relationship to spending money and like shopping. So I was allowing myself to like window shop a lot. And I made like some purchases that first month, but I was just like on foot, going to coffee shops, going to jazz bars. Like I had some pretty elite Google Maps that had been shared with me. So I felt like I had a great like treasure map, you could say, to just go like, you could have like dropped me in any corner of Tokyo and I would have like had a lot to go and see just based on recommendations from friends. So that was incredible. I also think the Japan part of the trip really reminded me of my inherent connection to magic and like also just my ability to connect with people in general. Like I made a lot of friends really fast in Tokyo through the program, but also just like randomly. Like a friend of a friend from New York had been living there for a few years. So we got a matcha like one of my first few days there and ended up really hitting it off and just like developing a really beautiful friendship. And I saw her like every week or so, and that was really sweet. Someone I met on a sailing trip 2 years ago was in Tokyo for a work rotation. So I got dinner with him and his girlfriend a lot, and they like would just kind of let me be little sister and like tag along to, you know, like dinners and drinks and stuff like that. And that was amazing. I also met through like another friend of a friend, this guy, Tommy, who's been living in Tokyo for 20 years and is like a principal of an international school and also a DJ and has like a beautiful family. And we connected a few times and I just like, I don't know, I was reminded that like wherever you go in the world, like connection is so available. And I had a lot of fun, like expanding my perspective and meeting new people and like just really like honoring and cultivating like beautiful connections. During that month I was there, I really felt like so immersed in Tokyo and got a real sense of what it was like to live there. Tokyo as a city is one of the most beautiful, clean, considerate, stunning cities I've ever been to. I really do think that's like a model city just from like an infrastructure perspective, like general mindfulness, self-awareness. Like I wouldn't necessarily say it's like super warm and kind, but it's like people are there's a lot of like self-preservation, a lot of like consideration for others and like awareness of the like of like everyone's space aside from like rush hour on the subway, which like is hell in any city. Yeah, it just felt very like calm and it also is like very quiet. There are no trash cans on the streets and like it's just like absolutely the most sparklingly clean city you could ever imagine. It's also like I happened to be there during a time where the dollar was very strong. Either the dollar was strong or the yen was weak. I don't know which is which. I'm not an economist, but it felt like a very livable city compared to New York. It was probably about like 30% cheaper than like cost of living in Manhattan, like food and like, I don't know, just like general entertainment and like just living your life. Like you could eat a gorgeous, gorgeous meal. And I mean, again, I'm like solo dining for the most part for like 20 US dollars, you know, like you could go have like you could go to basically the equivalent of like ABC Kitchen for my New Yorkers and like eat really well for $20. So that was great. Great time for me to be there and feel like I didn't have to kind of like scrimp or save or like compromise too much. I really felt grateful that I was able to have a lot of the like experiences I wanted to have. And yeah, just experience what it was like to live in one of the world's biggest cities, you know? Like I also think coming from New York, it felt very easy for me just to get like dropped into Tokyo and like that wasn't super overwhelming for me. Also just like it's really easy to navigate and get around and like Google Maps makes it so easy. The subway system is like ridiculously nice and well kept and like easy to use. So that was like really great. And when I wasn't like with the people in my program or really enjoying these like new social connections that I found, I spent a lot of time by myself. And in New York, I have such a beautiful community and like network of people, and I'm such a social creature that it's really easy for my calendar just to fill up without me even like realizing it. And it was beautiful to like step away from that and just like have all of this time to myself. And I spent so much time on like super long walks, just listening to my music, or just like allowing my mind to kind of expand and be like, yeah, just like rediscover my relationship to myself in a really beautiful way. And to be able to do that and like really slow down and examine and be present to, the like experiences I was having in my body too, was just like really, I think really a huge gift to me. It was also fun because like I would wake up and my friends in New York were going to bed or like winding down their days. So we had that like window, like an hour or two of time where we could catch up or voice note or text. And I sent hours and hours and hours and hours worth of voice notes to my friends back home and like lots of pictures. And yeah, it was great. So the Tokyo theme was really like reconnecting to my body, slowing down, and leaning into solitude as much as that allowed within the context of this like program that I was doing. I did write I left that program with like one solid like piece, which was a reflection on this concept of like, you really can like do what you want in this life. I mean, obviously within the context of the like your financial situation and the structure that you have, I am very aware that I was privileged enough to stumble into a career path post college. Not stumble into, I worked my ass off to get where I was in my corporate career. But I also recognize that like a lot of privilege went into that, the ability to even access like the education that I had and those opportunities in the first place. But, I was so miserable for so long, especially toward the last like few years in corporate America. And the real takeaway from the Japan part of the trip and the whole trip really, but especially Japan, was like, you really can leave your job and go do what you want. Like you really can go find other ways to make money. You really can go do the thing that sounds crazy and live to tell the tale and like develop resilience along the way. And when I left my job last year, the last place I ever expected to be a year later was in Japan or Bali or Thailand. That was not really on my radar, but it was like really cool and really beautiful to like find myself there, So Japan was great. And then my program ended the first week of February, and my best friend from high school, Kim, joined me in Tokyo, and we spent a few days in Tokyo. Then we went to Kyoto for 5 days, which was so beautiful and so fun. And then we went to Bali, which brings me to chapter 2. Okay, Bali. A lot of spiritual shifting happened in Bali, and a lot of hard looks in the mirror happened, and a lot of like really radical honesty with myself happened there. This trip really forced me to examine a lot of like romantic patterns too. I had some romantic experiences in Tokyo, which was really fun. And I'm not going to get too much into that. But I feel like the theme of my love life the past few years has been like whirlwind romances, which I love and are so fun. And so they're a drug. I mean, they're a drug, period. And after like, I guess the final whirlwind romance that I had in Tokyo, I had like a pretty big come down from that, because I do want a relationship and to find my person and to find my partner and to share this life with someone and to grow with someone and like commit to someone. Really excited for that chapter of my life. Because of that, between like kind of having had some romantic moments in Tokyo and then also like the subsequent come down, I was like, I really don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to be putting myself in situations where I am, I don't know, like disrupting my mental state with these like small dramas. And it's not even like the dynamics were that like, they weren't really toxic in any way, but it's just like when you're engaging with someone who like doesn't want what you want and like playing house for a few days, like it's intense. You get attached and like you want more than they can give you, I guess. And I was just like, I need to stop engaging with these like romantic bursts that like aren't ultimately like what I want them to be, or, you know, like aren't going to get me closer to like my long-term vision of like a committed partnership. And this is kind of tough because on one hand, I'm so like, life is short, live in the moment, embrace connection when you have it and when you can find it. And I do believe in like living that way, but also I think there does have to be a balance and like self-awareness of like when you're participating in something at a cost to like what you really are like trying to call in. And so in Bali, I had the space and the time and the comfort of my best friend to like really look at all of that and kind of like respectfully, lovingly like cut ties with, just I guess some like open connections that I really, really enjoyed, but like I knew weren't like, didn't have the long term, I guess, like potential that I needed or wanted. And that was hard. It's always an ouchie to cut off a crush. Like I love a crush, and I think my writer's brain is very stimulated by like possibility and, you know, narrative building and whatnot. But I had to really like clear the slate, I guess you could say, and also just like take a look at like why I was like engaging with certain dynamics that like again I knew like weren't necessarily like great for me. And that was it's hard to look some of that stuff like dead in the eyes and just be like, okay, I have to like take responsibility for like my part in all of this. And nothing but like love to all of my crushes, past and I actually don't have any crushes right now for once in my life, which is excruciating. But had to do a little bit of like releasing of energy. So that was happening in Bali. Kim and I were in Ubud, which was gorgeous. And then we went to Canggu. Canggu wasn't really our scene, so we pivoted to Nusa Senengan. I'm positive I'm butchering that. Sorry. It's like a small island off the coast of Bali and Lombok. Gorgeous. The island was like, it was like no vehicles on the island, just scooters, like super remote feeling. Like, we just enjoyed so much downtime and like just hanging out on the beach, watching like what felt like world-class surfing. It was amazing. And going to this like one beach bar that we just went to like every single day. And this beach bar had a place where you could like, it was like kind of at a high point and you could like jump off the cliff from the bar into the ocean and then like come back up. So I did that. And that was like really fun. I do not consider myself an adrenaline junkie, but I love a little like cliff dive. So that was great. And then Kim and I just like had a lot of time to reflect, and like we did a lot of meditating together and like envisioning and daydreaming about like what was next for both of us. And Kim is my oldest friend, so we know each other better than anyone. We're like sisters at this point, and we've traveled so much together at this point in our lives, which is so beautiful. That we just kind of have a good rhythm, and we know when to leave each other alone. We know when not to leave each other alone. We know when to not take things personally. That's more Kim not taking my attitude personally when I'm in a bad mood, because I famously can be in a bad mood sometimes. Sorry, Kim, you're God's strongest soldier for being my best friend. But no, it was great. And in addition to really looking at like romantic patterns and habits, I also was just like, okay, what am I doing with my life? Like, what am I doing with my career? There was a lot that had revealed itself about the nature of Brightsiding in the past year that, you know, was no longer feeling super aligned. And that also is hard to look at. It's hard to like kill your darlings and be like, well, I said I was going to go do XYZ thing when I left Google and I haven't, or I've tried and it hasn't worked out. And there was some like looking at, just things I had to like release there, and also like open up my mind to like other possibilities for what the future held for me from a career perspective. And I'm at this moment with Brightsiding where I really am trying to figure out what the like long-term vision is. Like the short term is pretty clear to me, but I'm in this moment of like engaging with it in a way that like I'm inviting in some answers to reveal themselves to me. More on that later. But the big theme of Bali and the conversations I was having with Kim were just around like, our respective like careers and what was working, what wasn't. Kim is someone who I can be really like honest with, and she'll always be really honest with me, but in like a very compassionate and gentle way, but also like in a very direct way. Like she's no BS and like is not gonna coddle me, which is good. Even though sometimes I'm like, just coddle me, please. But no, it was just like it was great, and I feel like opened up a lot of space for clarity to come when I got to Thailand. But we're not there yet, so finish up the Bali chapter. But yeah, Bali was like fun in the sun, balanced with like some deep spiritual reflection. And it was also just like gorgeous to be in the heat. I didn't really mention the weather, but like Tokyo was pretty cold, pretty clear, but cold, like 40s, like high 30s to like low 50s. So like I was in jackets. And to get to Bali, where it was just like so warm and tropical feeling, was like such an exhale. And my body responded really well to that. And it was also just so fun to like be there with my best friend. Like we had so much fun. And we were also like revamping Kim's dating profile. One thing about me, I am an excellent Instagram boyfriend. If I could have a career just taking pictures of my girls, I'd be a millionaire. It was so fun. So we were just like taking a billion pictures and like working on like the best Hinge profile we could possibly dream up. And it was really fun. And then we left the island that we were on. We went back to the Canggu area, and I went to Seminyak for surf camp. Kim literally dropped me off at surf camp and then flew back to the States. I was really sad for her to leave, but surf camp was a lifelong dream of mine. I've always wanted to learn how to surf. I'm very active. I skateboard, I do yoga, I grew up figure skating. I love to be like really in my body, and I love driving out to Rockaway Beach in New York, like any chance I get. And I've always wanted to like, play and learn how to surf. So what better place to do that than Bali? So I signed up for 4 days of surf camp. And I had 2 great days in the water before getting biblically sick. I got Bali belly, or like basically like water poisoning. I think basically I ingested so much salt water my first few days of surfing, like seawater, and which is like, one, shouldn't be drinking salt water, 2, really dirty. Like the seawater is like very, very dirty. So I was throwing up really nonstop. It came on really quick after my second day of surfing, and I was already like very dehydrated. And I knew that Bali belly was a thing, and I kind of was like bracing myself to get that or the equivalent like at some point in my travels, but it struck me down pretty quickly and pretty badly. It was like, it was very scary. And again, Kim had just left. I was in a room alone at that point, and basically I had to get a doctor to come to my hotel room, my like surf camp room, give me an IV drip, and just like restore my body. I got like, they gave me so much medication. I did not have travel insurance, so it was all very expensive, which was not fun, but whatever. I was calling my mom, just being like, I don't know if I'm going to make it, Mom. I was like, I don't get sick very often, but it was like quite scary. It's very scary to be like so sick, like 24-hour flight away from home. Like it was very scary, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I guess. And I wrote about that in my newsletter and talked about that a little bit more in my last podcast. So if you want more of the tea on that, it's documented and it's on the internet. But after surf camp, I went to Thailand. And why did I go to Thailand, you might ask? I went because a Japanese psychic told me to. I am always out here doing things because of vague advice from psychics. And one of the language teachers in my program back in Japan was the horoscope writer for Vogue Japan, and also is like a medium or psychic. And one day I was like, can you please not teach this class and just give us like readings? And she actually did, which shocked me. I was like, no way. But a part of my reading, she was like, I'm getting like a really loud message for you to go to Thailand. And I was like, say less. So that is just like that is a window into how I operate. And I didn't have anything else planned after Bali, and I was like, sure, why not? And so I took myself to Thailand. And when I was in Japan, I was just in Tokyo and then Kyoto for a few days. But like I didn't do any adventuring outside of the city because I really wanted to just get a feel for Tokyo. I didn't want my weekends to feel super like excursion based or rushed. Like it was really fun for me to like be in the city. That's all to say I was quite settled there. But in Thailand, I was like on the go. I hadn't slept. By the time I got back to New York, I hadn't slept in the same bed for more than 4 nights in 6 weeks. So I was moving around. I started in Bangkok, which I loved. Started in Bangkok, then flew down to Koh Samui, then went for a silent retreat. Crazy, shocking for me, who can talk to myself for hours at a time. And then I went back to Koh Samui for another 4 or 5 days. And then I went to Hua Hin, which is like on the mainland on the east coast, kind of like halfway between the islands and Bangkok. And then from Hua Hin, got a tattoo. Got this stick and poke tattoo, which was really special. I'll share that story in a minute. Then from Hua Hin, I went up to Chiang Mai. From Chiang Mai, I went back to Bangkok, spent 5 days in Bangkok before flying back to Tokyo and then flying home to New York. Which is all to say that Thailand was, if Tokyo was like embracing solitude, resetting my brain and body, and Bali was about like really looking at some honest truths and like some hard truths in the mirror, Thailand was about whimsy and like really integrating a lot of beliefs that I guess I've been cultivating for the past few years, and beliefs in abundance and signs and magic again. By the time I got to Bangkok on March 1st, it was getting like 2 days after like getting really, really sick in Bali. There was a part of me that was like, I just want to go home. I was homesick. I was, alone. And despite the like joy of solitude that I discovered in Tokyo, I am quite social. And I, was just like, what am I going to do with myself for a month? And like, I had no itinerary. I had no sense of like what the month had in store. And like, I was planning everything in real time. So like every like few days I was like, what's the next destination, and like, how am I getting there, booking the flights and booking the Airbnbs. But I really like to travel that way, and that was really fun. And I think the month in Thailand of doing that and doing that alone built a lot of like resilience in myself. And I've traveled a lot. I've traveled alone a decent amount, but traveling alone in Asia just like is very different, especially in Thailand, which is like pretty chaotic compared to Japan, and just like a very like intense place. Fun, but like, Bangkok is like crazy and sprawling and like the worst traffic you've ever seen. Like imagine LA traffic times 1,000. Yeah. Plus like scooters and motorcycles and like pedestrians. Crazy. But I really loved Bangkok. Also, when I got to Bangkok, I was, because I was like, fuck, like there's still a long way to go here. And like, I was also just like, looking at my bank account and just being like, what am I doing? And like, is this just ridiculous? Like, what am I doing out here? And like, this feels like, I'm not working right now. Like, this is kind of scary. And I don't know. It's just like, what is going on here? And like, why am I here? And like, I'm here because a psychic told me to. That's so stupid. Like, what the fuck? But I read my first like 5 days in Bangkok. Again, I was still like, kind of recovering from being sick and like still eating like really simple food. And I was staying in like a northern, quieter part of Bangkok that was a little bit more like suburban, I guess you could say. It wasn't the suburbs, but it was like quieter and like not super close to like downtown central Bangkok. So that was some good like forced slowness. And during that time, I read The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, which was recommended to me by one of my best friends, Daniela. And that just like changed something in my brain. And I was also kind of just like, okay, Erica, you have like two options right now. You can go through this month feeling fear and scarcity and questioning everything, or you can embrace being in Thailand for a month. Like, what a gift. Like, the purpose of this trip might not reveal itself right away, but like, let's choose to believe in abundance. Let's choose to believe in joy. And let's just like lean into this. Let's have fun. Let's embrace this. Like, what's the alternative here? As my coach Amari said to me in a different context, like, I didn't come this far just to come this far, So I spent those first 5 days in Thailand. I was like exploring Bangkok and also like reading this book and just like, it was like, yeah, I'm going to just like embrace this and like really like choose joy here. And I started to see the craziest signs in Bangkok. Bangkok is already like a very maximalist, colorful, very, very like dense city. Art everywhere. I was so drawn to the street art in Thailand. And on maybe my second or third day in Bangkok, I went to Wat Arun, which is like the temple of sunrise. Beautiful, ridiculously gorgeous. And then I was like walking around Bangkok that day, and I saw these signs outside of like a neon shop that said welcome Bogdan in Thailand. My name is Polish slash like Eastern European. Like, what are the chances that that was like on a neon sign in Bangkok? It was like so crazy, but also just like really put wind in my sails that like I was about to have a really like great month. And I did. And yeah, and like once I kind of shifted my mindset into the space of just like really committing to the timeline that I was in and committing to being there and trusting that like I was there for a reason and I didn't have to know what that reason was. Like I just had to go, like give it my all and like be there and enjoy it and have fun. Like, a lot like opened up for me, I would say. Actually, when I was in Bali with Kim in one of the like places that we stayed, there was just kind of like a leave a book, take a book situation. And there was a like Lonely Planet guide to Thailand. So I had that with me. I was just kind of in real time flipping through this Lonely Planet book from 2018, just being like, where should I go next? And yeah, and so I decided to go to Koh Samui, which is one of the islands after Bangkok, which was really fun. When I was in Bali, I like got to ride a scooter around the island that we stayed on, and I learned that I love a scooter, love a Vespa, love riding a scooter around. So I got to Koh Samui. I was staying at a really cute like apartment, rented a scooter for literally like $25 for like 5 days. I rented a scooter. It was crazy. Scootered around the whole island. I was just feeling so free. Also, White Lotus had like just started airing, so I was like watching White Lotus as I was like on the island where it was being filmed. I was drinking Thai iced teas every day. It was so fun, like really so much fun. And I think that this past year has really been about freedom for me, and I think that like really seeped into my bloodstream, and like I really felt this profound sense of like freedom on Koh Samui. And yeah, and also like the joy of traveling alone is just like you can eat what you want when you want. You can be on your own schedule. You can do whatever the fuck you want. And yeah, one afternoon I truly was just like, yeah, I'm going to scooter around the entire island today. I had no idea how even big this island was. And in retrospect, I could have probably planned that one out a little bit more. I like had my wired headphones in, listening to my playlist, which was heavily influenced by the White Lotus soundtrack. So much good music on that soundtrack. But yeah, I was just scooting around, taking it all in, and it was really, really something. And then as I was like on Koh Samui trying to figure out my next move, I was like just on Airbnb, like looking at places, and I found this like female only silent retreat literally listed on Airbnb. And it's funny because I had seen that maybe like I'd come across that listing when I was in Bangkok and I just kind of glazed over it because I was like silent retreat. Then it caught my eye again and I was like, wait, yeah, actually, yeah, that sounds great. And it was like silent retreat slash digital detox. And I was like, that might do me really well, actually. Like, and this whole trip was also just about kind of like leaning into my growth edges, and like zipping my lips is a growth edge. And also getting off of my phone and computer. Another thing, sorry, this is kind of a non-linear thing, but another thing that happened in Bali was I decided to get off Instagram. I will be returning to Instagram in some capacity, but like that was another big personal challenge for me because I found that I was like really like participating in Instagram for the like dopamine hits of like likes and comments and like feedback. And also I decided to get off Instagram around the time I was kind of like detoxing from my crushes too. So I was like, let me just step back. So I saw this silent retreat and digital detox as like the kind of like final step in my radicalization of like becoming chronically offline. And I was also just curious. I was like, sure. So I was like, let me do like 3 days here, 3 or 4 days. And yeah, I took a ferry from Koh Samui to Koh Phangan. And yeah, this retreat center that I was at was just like so beautiful. I had the option, I guess, to like rent a scooter on that island, but I was like, no, let me just like stay put for 3 or 4 days, which also is a challenge for me because I really like to be out and about and on the go, and like stillness isn't something that has always been supernatural to me. So I was like, no, let me just like really lean into this. And it wasn't like super hardcore like programming. Like it was really just like this space is designated for solitude and introspection. Like the owner of the retreat was there, who was this beautiful, beautiful woman named Michelle. And we actually had some like great conversations, and she like shared a lot about the journey that she's been on and like creating this space. She is from Malaysia, but owns this retreat center in Thailand. And she's like, the point isn't like to have like hardcore rules imposed upon you, but like my intention is to create a space where women can like come and feel safe to like unplug and relax and like process whatever it is that they're going through. And she's like, you'll probably like this retreat center is full, but you'll probably like never really see other people. Like everyone really keeps to themselves and is like, yeah, like here to process something. She's like, a lot of women are here like crying and like coming down from, like relationships or bad jobs or, just like finding themselves and connecting to themselves. And like, that's a very vulnerable thing to do. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm like so excited about this. And I shut off my computer and phone, put them in a safe. I was like, I told the people that needed to know that I wasn't going to be reachable for a few days, but like, don't worry about me. Yeah. And what I found was that I like was so exhausted. I like slept a lot those first few days. And there's like a small town that I could walk into for like breakfast and lunch. I did a lot of journaling and writing there. I also like asked the owner, Michelle, she had like a big, beautiful, like spiritual library. I was like, can you pull a few books for me? That would be like really special. And she pulled Big Magic, which I had read before, but I devoured again in like 2 days. And then she pulled a book for me called The Magic, which is by Rhonda Byrne. She's the director of the movie The Secret, which I haven't seen. But The Magic, the book, was really just about like radical gratitude. And yeah, I didn't get to read the whole thing, but it really was like pretty beautiful read at that moment in the trip for me. I left that experience just feeling like quite restored and rested. And I think it came at a good time because at that point I was entering maybe like the last 3 weeks of the trip. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize like how tired I was from like moving around. And I think a big benefit of like traveling for so long is that you really get to like do so much and see so much, and like you're able to languish in these destinations where otherwise you might be like trying to maximize your time. And it was really nice just to rest, and like for the purpose of that part of the trip to be rest. Yeah. And then I did 3 full days there, and then went back to Koh Samui, was there for another 4 or 5 days. Throughout all of these experiences in Thailand, I was getting a lot of like downloads and clarity on like what was next for me in my career specifically. I'm not going to share all of that right now, but like all of these experiences cumulatively like really, really helped me get in touch with some answers that I really went into this trip seeking. Because I went into like this whole adventure just like really excited about the prospect of like traveling for 3 months, but also with like a bit of apprehension and fear just around like not coming back to New York with much clarity on like what I wanted to do when I got back, like what my direction was going to be. And Thailand was the chapter of the trip where like a lot of just like clarity came to me because I set the intention to connect with it, and I made a lot of space to like listen. And also the first like half of my month in Thailand, I like wasn't drinking. So yeah, I was just like quite chemically neutral in my body, which I think really, really helped. And yeah, it's like not always the easiest thing to do is like hard reset on your nervous system like that. But that was great. And then once I was back on Koh Samui, I like leaned into like, yeah, it was just like a little bit less precious with it all. I was like, all right, let's just have fun. Weed is legal. I like smoked some joints on the beach. I got a lot of Thai massages, gorgeous. Ate a lot, just like kept scootering around at the Airbnb I was staying at. The second time I was on Koh Samui, it was a little bit more like remote, and I was a little anxious about just like how like off the beaten path it was. And this little stray dog just like assigned himself to me. And I like woke up my first morning there and he was just like sleeping outside my door. And I was like, hey. And then I was just kind of expecting him to like leave, but he like was my guard dog for that entire time. Bought him dog food and I fed him Evian, and I was like, you're my prince. And I loved him so much. And I cried when I had to leave him because we really had a special connection. I also just love animals and I want a pet so bad. But that was really fun. And then went to Hua Hin, had a really beautiful experience getting this tattoo. As I mentioned earlier, I was really drawn to all the street art in Thailand. And in Hua Hin, there were like these eyes everywhere, like gorgeous. And I was like taking a bunch of pictures of like this one particular like style of street art. And then on a walk one afternoon, I stumbled into this art gallery space. It said like art and hand poke tattoos. I was like, cool, sign me the fuck up. And it was the artist's gallery, like the artist who has all these eyes. And his partner, Bo, she's so perfect and so cute. She tattooed his work. And I was like, that is so cool. And I knew I was like going to get a tattoo at some point on this trip. And I was like, guess this is it. Guess it's happening. And I was so excited. And it all just felt like very kismet. And at that point, I was especially like really like craving social connection. And like, you know, I was like, I think feeling a little bit lonely. And Bo and I just like had really similar stories. She's 31, from a small town, moved to Bangkok, got a job as a sales engineer in tech, was, you know, not happy there, left her corporate job, moved down to Hua Hin because she also was so in love with this art, and then like ended up meeting the artist. Now they live together. She tattoos his work, and her own work. She like has become a hand poke tattoo artist. She is just like so dedicated to her craft and so precise. And as I was like planning the tattoo with her, I went, kind of picked out what I thought I wanted. It's like, let me take some time with this and I'll like WhatsApp you and we'll pick a time and a date and whatever. And as I was like planning, I WhatsApped her and I was like, by the way, like, does Joe, the artist, like sell any of his prints? Like, does he sell any of his work? She was like, no, like it's just the street art and then like it's the tattoos. I was like, that is so baller. That like, I was like, I just love that and respect that so much as an artist. That is like, if you like my art, you can literally only get it tattooed on you. I was like, slay. But then at the end of my tattoo appointment, they gave me the framed like print of the tattoo that I got. Hold on, I'll get it. I'll show you. They gave me this at the end, and I was like in tears just at like the thoughtfulness of that. And then this is me and Bo, so cute. So that was like really special, and that is now probably like my most meaningful tattoo. And yeah, at that point the trip was winding down. I had like maybe week and a half left, and I was supposed to be in Hua Hin for a full week, but you really just like don't need a full week there. And I was like, I have this time, let me go up to Chiang Mai. I went up to Chiang Mai, loved it. That was like an incredibly special part of the trip. I stayed in what felt like a treehouse. Bangkok is huge. I'm probably getting this number wrong, but I would estimate it's like 8 million people. And Chiang Mai is like 200,000 people. So just like very intimate, very small. It's like a square, like the city or town is like a square, and then like kind of surrounding area. So it's just like very walkable. I loved the shopping there. The markets were like incredible. I did a lot of shopping in Chiang Mai and Bangkok because the markets were just like crazy, and it was very, very affordable. And then, yeah, I made my way back to Bangkok, and I was in Bangkok again. I've said this for like 5 more days. And I felt really happy to be back there, but I felt really ready to come home towards the end there, and felt like my trip was like nearing completion. And that was like really beautiful to sit with too, because I think heading into this trip, I was worried that I like wasn't going to want to come home or was going to want to extend, and just like, it felt really good to feel homesick, if that makes sense. And then I went back to Tokyo, and it was, as I was like planning my travel from Thailand back to Tokyo, there was a part of me that was like, what, this feels complicated. Like, why did I do it this way? Why am I like retracing my steps back to Japan? Because like, it's not like a quick 2-hour flight from like Thailand to Tokyo. It's like 7 hours. Like, getting around in Southeast Asia is like no joke. It's not. I went in so naive. I was like, oh, I can just like hop around. No, it's not like Europe where you're like, oh, I can just like la la la, like France to Spain hour. No, it's like long distance travel. But it was really cool to get back to Tokyo and see the cherry blossoms, and just to like really reflect and like sit with all of the change that had happened within myself in those past 2 months. Like, a lot happened. And I got to see some friends from that first round, you know, my first month there. And yeah, it felt like a really, really, really magical way to like close it out. And it also like, I got kind of the full spectrum of weather those past 5 days. I got like unreasonably gorgeous, like sunny day, like 60s or 70s, like spring, gorgeous. And like the cherry blossoms were just doing their thing. I hung out with my friend Tommy. We just like walked on the river where all the blossoms are. And it was like, unreal. And then like the next few days were like downpour not pleasant, like disgusting pouring rain. So I was like forced to be a little bit slower than I might have otherwise been, but like watched Lost in Translation, watched Totoro in my hotel room, and just like at that point I was just so ready to come home. And I was like, yeah, I think allowing myself just to like really reflect on that and be like, oh wow, like why am I excited to go home, and like what am I excited about, and like I'm so excited to get home. And if I like could have moved my flight up a few days, I probably would have, but like to really sit with that, yeah, again, it was a growth edge. And yeah, and then I got back on April 1st, and it's been a pretty intense whirlwind 2 weeks since getting back. I can't believe I've been back for 2 weeks now. And I have so much to say about like what it's like to be back in New York. I was planning on including that in this episode, but it's already been an hour plus, so I'm going to save that for another one. But yeah, my whole thing with Brightsiding is meeting yourself where you are. And I really learned a lot about like what it means to meet yourself where you are when you remove yourself from your comfort zone and from your environment into what's familiar to you, and you remove yourself from your community, and you're really forced to be honest with yourself, be nimble, be very aware of like what's happening in your mind and like the dialogue in your mind, and like how your belief system is coloring the experiences that you're having. And I can reflect on it in this way and like talk about it from a high level overview, but I think it's going to take some time for like the magnitude of this experience to like really seep into my bloodstream, you know? Like I think there's a lot from this trip that like has yet to even reveal itself to me. But yeah, a lot on the horizon. And I'm excited about it, and I'm excited to be experimenting with video. There's a lot in the works, and I can't wait to share more about that as I'm ready. But thank you for being here. Tell me what you're into, what you're not into. This is really fun for me. So lots of love, and I'll talk to you soon.